what are some of the pros that I liked being a staff nurse? To look when I was working staff, the math just wasn't mathing. I remember when I was working at the hospital, they were trying to give me 1 week off after a year of working full time. So that how to pay significantly less in taxes so that you could keep most of your growth. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I am so excited for today's video because in today's video we're going to be talking about a topic that I haven't covered in so long, and that is nursing, but more specifically agency nursing. As we all know, the pandemic has literally created a major increase in the need for nurses. There's always been a need for nurses, but never like now, because a lot of nurses have packed their ish and completely left the field altogether or have left the bedside. So now more than ever, there's been just a super high demand for nurses, and agency nurses are making bank right now. I know a lot of people out there are a little bit confused as to how agency nursing works, what agency nursing exactly is, what the catch is to making all this money, taxes, and all of those stuff. So I'm going to be talking to you guys about everything that it is that I've learned in my 1.5 years now working as agency staff, and we'll be going over all those frequently asked questions. If there is anything specific you guys want to know, I will leave the timestamps right over here. You guys can go ahead and skip over to whatever part is most relevant or most important to you. This one is going to be good. So my official nursing journey started in 2016 when I officially decided that I was gonna go the LPN route, and I really wanted to transform my life. I didn't have the prerequisites to go to the RN program, and I just needed something that would create some type of security and create some type of financial stability for me. And then if ever I decided to go back for my RN, then that option would always be available to me. So the LPN route was the best choice for me at the time, and I went to one of my local schools. I signed up. I ended up doing the entrance test in the month of November 2016, and I officially started my program on the 9th of January, I believe, 2017, if I remember the date correctly. So after 3 months of full-time being in school, doing first aid, doing infection control, doing nursing foundations and ethics and stuff like that, we officially became qualified to work as certified nursing assistants or patient care techs, and I worked as a CNA at a retirement home. After about 6 months working there, I applied for a patient care tech job at a hospital, which I received, and I finished my last year of nursing school working part-time as a patient care tech until I officially graduated from nursing school on July 12th of 2019, I believe, and that is when I officially got my first nursing job, and it just went up from there. So I did fail a class in nursing school, which required for me to wait 5 months before I could continue, so that was a huge delay. It takes 2 years, but it took me a little bit more than 2 years for me to finish, and I didn't pass the NCLEX until March, or not the NCLEX, our exam has a different name, but our equivalence to the NCLEX or our board exam over here, I wrote in December of 2020, and that's officially when I passed and became a nurse. But before that, I was working as a pending licensed nurse. So I was working under the supervision of a registered staff member, whether it was a licensed practical nurse or a registered nurse. And I was pretty much doing everything that I would do as a nurse, just under their supervision. And after that facility, I went to other places. I still stuck around at that place. I never actually quit, but I went to other retirement homes just to see what other options there were for me. I think the most I got offered was probably about $21 an hour. And that was around the range that I was making as a new grad. But it just was what I had to do. I was also doing a lot of doubles just to rack up a little bit of money, because that's when I officially started saving to move out and to move to a completely different city. So if you guys are interested in my moving story and how I moved from different cities, I will leave that playlist somewhere here so you guys can check that out. But I did that for about a year. And then I found myself a job in another city, a nearby city called Ottawa. I'm originally from Montreal, so then I moved to Ottawa, which is about 2 hours away. The reason why I moved is because Ontario has just better paying rates than Quebec does. I was not making the kind of money that I knew I could make in Quebec. And so I decided to make the change and the sacrifice, and I up and left Quebec and moved to, well, I actually moved to Gatineau, so I was still living in Quebec, but I was working across the bridge in Ontario so that I can make more money. And I was making a lot more money, or what I thought was a lot more money at the time. I went from making $19 an hour, and then once I got my license, I applied for a hospital job, and I think 6 months later I was working at the hospital, and my starting salary there was $30 an hour. So already it was a little bit better for me. So what exactly is the difference between an agency nurse and a staff nurse? Let's get into that. So the main difference between an agency nurse and a staff nurse is that, generally speaking, a staff nurse will work as an employee for a certain facility, whereas an agency nurse will usually work as an independent contractor, which falls under the category of business owner. So as an agency nurse, you're not necessarily working for the agency, but you're working through the agency. So the agency is not employing you. They're saying, hey, we are the middleman. We have connections to facilities that need nurses, and they're telling the facilities, we have the connections to the nurses that it is that you need. So what happens is the agency will partner up with a facility, they will sign a contract, the agency will partner up with nurses, they will sign a contract, and the agency will work as the middleman between the nurses and the facility. Now, you can be an employee for an agency. All agencies are different. I have seen some agencies that have actually hired nurses as their employees and given nurses benefits and stuff like that. But a lot of the times, at least in my experience here in Canada, nurses do not fall under the category of an employee. They fall under the category of an independent contractor. Now, let's get into the pros and the cons of being a staff nurse versus being an agency nurse, and the reason why I decided to completely leave staff nursing and just fully transition into agency nursing. So what are some of the pros that I liked being a staff nurse? Nothing. No, I'm just joking. So one of the pros that a lot of nurses, or that I hear a lot of nurses say that they really like, is the benefits. So a lot of times if you're hired directly by a facility, they will offer you benefits, so healthcare benefits, paid time off, sick leave, and a bunch of other benefits that sometimes you may not necessarily get depending on what agency it is that you're working for. A lot of nurses also like that being a staff nurse, you kind of get to learn your floor, you become comfortable on your floor, you don't have to hop around all the time, and you can kind of just go to your job every day. You don't know the cases that you're gonna receive, you don't know exactly what's gonna happen, but once again, you know your floor, you know your staff, you know where everything is, you're comfortable, versus kind of hopping around like an agency nurse and not exactly knowing, you know, the places that you're gonna be working at. If you are a staff nurse and there are other things that you would like to add, please go ahead and add them down below. Now, what are some of the cons of being a staff nurse? The first con that I personally don't like is being stuck at the same place every day. There's a lot of antics, a lot of work drama that comes with being a staff nurse, and I just can't deal with it. If you guys are resonating with what it is that I'm saying, please comment down below. Another con that I personally do not really like is the whole benefit thing, and let me elaborate on that. I live in Canada where we have free healthcare. It's not really free. Our healthcare is paid through the taxes, the ridiculously high taxes that we pay here in Canada. So even though it isn't free per se, we don't feel it as much because we're just paying it through taxes versus paying it out of pocket when we get sick. I am healthy. I don't really need any insurance. And I remember working at the hospital where they forced me to take an insurance plan. I absolutely had to take one. And I was paying about $200 a month for insurance that covered things like spas, that covered things like glasses. I mean, how often am I changing my glasses? If I change my glasses, I probably change it once, every 2 years? And if I change it within 2 years or so, I might pay, $500 one time out of pocket if I decide to get something designer, which I don't even do anymore. I get my glasses off of Zillow for you can get a cute pair of frames for $10, $20 and, you know, put your lenses in there, maybe $200, and you have yourself a nice pair of glasses. So it didn't really make sense to me that I was paying $200 every single month for something that I rarely used, and that if I was to ever use would cost me way less than what it is I'm putting in. Like, that's like what, $2,400 a year, is that correct? 200 times 10, 2,000 plus, yeah, $2,400 a year that I'm paying in insurance that I was never using. So that is one thing that I really don't like. If you are using your insurance, then great, but I just wasn't using it. And spas, I mean, I'm not going to the spa every single month or twice a month, so it just didn't really make any sense to me. Another thing that I don't like about being a staff nurse is basically having no control over my personal life. A lot of these staff employers will give you ridiculously unfair time off. I remember when I was working at the hospital, they were trying to give me 1 week off after a year of working full time. On top of that, I had to compete for when I could get my time off. So if I wanted to go on a trip with a certain amount of friends and we agreed to do it on a certain date that fit everybody's schedule, if you try to get that date but there's somebody who has more seniority than you who applies for that same date, then you get bumped out of your dates and you have to take the next best thing. So sometimes you just end up with a week off during the crappiest time of the year when there's nothing to do, when you might have wanted your week off during a better week where there are festivals and activities and things in your city that you can enjoy with your friends or your family and all of that. So having to ask for permission for time off, having to get a very small amount of time off after working so many hours, and then having to compete for time off with people who have more seniority than me was just something that I could not deal with. So for me personally, some of the pros that I really enjoy when it comes to agency work is that I have full control over my time. I'm doing local travel nursing at the moment, so I kind of get to pick my schedules out week after week, right? So the way it works for us is they will send us on the app these shifts. I work with 2 agencies. So one will kind of just text me the availabilities. The other one will kind of just send me everything that they have on an app, and we just go ahead and pick. One agency, let's say agency A, will text me and say, hey, we need somebody for this date, this date, this date, this date, and this time, this time, this time. Let me know which ones you're interested in. And I will say, okay, out of the ones that you sent me, I can do this one, this one, this one, this one. And then that's it. But if next week I'm tired, or if next week I decide that I want to go on a vacation, I could just say, hey, you know what, all of next week or for the next 2 weeks, I'm not going to be available because I'm going to be going on vacation. And when I come back, I'm back. Do you have any shifts? And they will send you a bunch of shifts because there's such a demand everywhere that there are always shifts available. So I could kind of just go and come as I please without having to ask for permission. I just book my ticket and let the agency know that I'm not free on those days. Another pro of being an agency nurse, especially if you are a cross-country or cross-province travel agency nurse, is that you get to travel for free. As a local travel nurse, I'm working locally at different facilities within my area. So I'm hopping in my car and I'm driving to these areas, and a lot of facilities will actually pay you for your mileage and sometimes even pay you for your gas so that you can get to work. So definitely ask questions when you are, trying to look for an agency. Make sure that that is one of the questions that you ask them if you do want to start as a local travel nurse or local agency nurse. I know a lot of home care staffing agencies do that as well. If you do travel nursing, you can actually travel for free. There are so many pros that come with that because you get to take workations. You get to kind of just take your regular life that you have at home, and you get to pick it up and bring it somewhere else, and you get to work as a nurse and still do what you would be doing at home but in a completely different area. Get that change of scenery, change of environment, change of weather. Even if you like skiing, you can go to an area where there are a lot of ski slopes and tall mountains. I know a lot of people over here like to go to Kelowna, British Columbia for skiing and stuff, so a lot of nurses take assignments over there. Most agencies, if not all agencies who will ask for you to travel, will pay your flight. They will give you a place to stay, whether it's shared accommodation or a single apartment. Some of them will even pay for you to bring your family. Sometimes you might have to pay out of pocket for your family, but some people will actually assist you in bringing your family with you. So if you have children or a spouse, you can bring your spouse and your kids with you on your travel assignments so that you don't have to be away from them while you travel. Another pro that I like is that nobody touches my money. I work and I make 100% of my pay. I don't have to worry about union. I don't have to worry about taxes. I don't have to worry about any of those things when getting paid. If I work 8 hours, I get paid for my full 8 hours and nobody touches my money. So I get everything in full. When I was working staff, the math just wasn't mathing. I just didn't understand how I was working 80 hours, 90 hours in 2 weeks, 100 hours, 120 hours in 2 weeks. And when I was getting my pay, I was literally making less than what I would make working 2 days or 3 days as an agency nurse. And I was working 5 days a week. Sometimes I was even doing doubles. So that just wasn't making any sense to me. So now let's get into the salary differences. We're gonna do a little bit of math when it comes to the whole taxes thing, which is what we're gonna cover next, so that I could give you guys a better understanding of how taxes works and how agency nurses are really just winning out. Now, one misconception that I hear a lot of staff nurses say about agency nurses is that yes, agency nurses make all this money, but then they have to pay it all in taxes afterwards anyway, and it probably comes back down to about the same thing, and that could not be further from the truth. I am not an accountant, but I'm going to show you guys or drop a few gems that I have learned. You guys can go find this information online. I learned this information from my CPA, but I am not a CPA, so please go to an accountant, a registered accountant in your area, and see what the rules are like. But to be honest, this should be general. The percentages might be different depending on where you're from, but the rules are still pretty general to most places. So here in Canada, from my understanding federally, from the little education that I received from my CPA, is that the percentage of taxes that we have to pay is different. So a corporation will usually pay about 12% in taxes off of the profit that they make, not the total amount of money that they make, but the profit that they make. An independent contractor will usually pay about 25%, and an employee will usually pay 40% of taxes on the total amount of money that they have made. If you are an employee, whether you're a nurse, it doesn't matter where you're employed or what it is that you do, but if you are an employee, 40% of your salary is what is going to be going towards your taxes. So let's do some quick math here. I'm going to try to put it up on the screen, but when I was making $30 an hour, I was getting paid for 7.5 hours. I was making $225 a day. And then after, once you multiply it times 5, that's $1,125 I was making a week, and times 4 weeks is $4,500. Now, if we subtract 40% of that, that's $1,800, leaving us with $2,700. So out of $4,500, you're left with $2,700 take home. So let's just stick with the median, what we're usually making, about $50 an hour. So $50 an hour, we usually get paid for the full 8 hours, which is $400 a day. Now, if you multiply that by 5, that's $2,000 a week. And you multiply that by 4, which is $8,000 a month. Multiply that by 12, that's $96,000 a year that you're making before taxes. $72,000 is what my take home would be, versus the staff nurse whose take home is $32,000 after paying their $21,000 in taxes. So is there a difference? You let me know down below.